Jackson Radio Show.
Oh man, do I have a story for you guys. Yikes. The left are cray-cray. They are crazy. Welcome everybody. Kevin Jackson. It's the Kevin Jackson Show. So I'm a big fan of Sebastian Gorka. Met the man. The dude is huge. He's big. Big head, big hand. Big. I mean, just takes up a lot of space. And he's got this big booming voice. And unlike most of the academics and the guys that carry and women that have PhDs and blankety blank or whatever, I actually respect this guy's doctorate, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. He's special assistant to President Trump. And he's talking about, he's on MSNBC, and he's asked the question of how are you going to thwart terror in America and in the world? And Gorka gives a brilliant answer. I'm going to play the clip here in a second, but this answer is brilliant. And yet, the MSNBC hosts, there are two hosts, Velshi and Stephanie Rule. Ali Velshi and Stephanie Rule. And what cracks me up most about these two is you have an expert who gives you the answer and you say, but. It's like my mechanic saying to me, well, Kevin, let me explain to you what's happening with your vehicle. This clacking sound you're hearing is your valve hitting against the wall, blah, blah, blah. And I go, yeah, but could it also be my tires? I mean, it literally is that stupid. And I'm going to play the clip in a second because I want you to hear this and I want to dissect it because it goes to show you just how crazy the left is. Guys, I talk about the disease of leftism and you're about to see it in full display. Let's get that clip.
All right, let's talk a little more broadly about terror strategy, which is something you're directing for the White House. Most of the extremist-inspired attacks on the West we've seen in the last year or so have little or no material or operational connection to ISIS. Let's call it ISIS 1.0 versus 2.0. The new ISIS, or these new attacks, seem to be almost exclusively inspirational, imploring attackers in the West to use whatever they've got at their disposal to attack Westerners. And a lot of people say this isn't going to wane despite the imminent collapse of ISIS. How does your strategy deal with this?
Well, first things first, it jettisons the political correctness of the last 8 years, and we call the enemy for what it is. We don't say that they're unemployed people and we just need more jobs.
How does that actually stop an attack?
May I answer your question without being interrupted?
Go ahead.
Thank you. You cannot solve a problem unless you're allowed to talk truthfully about it. So we will call it radical Islamic terrorism. We will target the ideology and we will call them out for being evil, and we will work with our Muslim partners. This is the crucial part. We are not here to invade other people's countries and occupy them. The president thinks that's fundamentally un-American. We are here to help those nations that share our values and share our interests and help them fight the fight, whether it's the Iraqis and Kurds in Iraq, whether it's the Egyptians in the Sinai, or whether it's our European allies that now have to deal with this very severe threat to their own countries.
Guided by.
Now, I want to stop it there for just a second. Welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson here. It's the Kevin Jackson Show. That's Gorka giving an amazing answer. He's saying, look, we have to win a philosophical battle, a marketing battle. We cannot win that marketing battle unless we call this thing what it is. And as he used the term, we've jettisoned the political correct nature of what the previous administration had tried to set up or establish, the politically correct narrative, I should say, of the previous administration. And we are going to call Islamic terror what it is. We will identify it. We will work with nations that share our interests in order to say, we aren't going to nation build with you. You want to have whatever you have in terms of Islam, do it. Because what we know is something very simple, and the Saudis are starting to see this. You cannot survive monolithically. The Saudis and the Middle Eastern countries can't survive on just oil. We're transitioning over. Saudi Arabia now wants to become a place for tourism. How are you going to become a place for tourism when you beat women, you do vaginal mutilation, you stone women, you kill with honor, what they call honor killings and so on, and you don't allow people to live their lives? If I come to Saudi Arabia, I have to follow Saudi Arabian tradition. Do I have to wear a hijab? Blah, blah, blah. You know, the point is they are all going to have to make this shift. And that shift is you have to embrace the world. We've done it. That's why we're winning in this whole war of ideas. Look, I don't mean it in a bad way, but it is a war of ideas. And so the United States wins in the war of ideas. That's the only thing that makes us better than everybody else, is because we've allowed all these ideas to come here, go to war, battle it out, and the best ideas rise to the top. And so Gorka is explaining that by doing this and by showcasing that we are going to call it what it is, and we're going to get other people to do it, and so on and so forth, we will win the battle. When people no longer want to be associated with radical Islam, then we start to win. Anyway, I want to continue with that clip, because I want you to hear the rest of this exchange, because this is where you start to see how the left are crazy people.
Again, I don't understand how calling it by its name stops the attacks in Paris or in Belgium.
So if you, God forbid, caught cancer, and the hospital was forbidden from calling it cancer and said you have the flu, go home and hydrate and take some aspirins, would you actually have the right treatment?
No, but there's still no cure for cancer.
Sorry, but have you not heard of chemo?
I have heard of chemo, and cancer can still kill you. So it doesn't matter what you call it.
But cancer it doesn't matter what you call it, really. So if I call it the flu and say go home and take some aspirin, what's going to happen to you,
Gorka,
Stephanie?
there must be a better response to that, right?
I want us to stop it there because I want to actually talk a little bit about the meaning of what Gorka was saying, and these people arguing the bigger point. So Gorka says, if you go to the doctor and they misdiagnose you, and he used cancer as an example, but a misdiagnosis is a misdiagnosis. If you treat the wrong thing, do you solve the problem? And they pretend not to notice the bigger picture and then go into the idea, well, cancer, you can't cure cancer. Yes, you can. You can excise cancer. If I have skin cancer, a spot on my arm, and the guy goes, you have the flu, I'm going to look at him and go, exactly how does the flu relate to my skin cancer? I mean, this thing that looks like skin cancer. Trust me, Kevin, it's the flu. Go home. Don't worry about it until it kills you. There are some benign forms of cancer. I mean, they're malignant, but they're less aggressive than others. And I'll tell you what, let's use John McCain. What if John McCain had been told he has the flu? What do you think he'd be doing right now? Hey, I know we looked at this brain biopsy and it's crazy, but you have the flu. They pretend to miss the bigger picture. That's what's so disturbing. But I want to play the rest of it because it gets worse.
I asked you a very straightforward question. This is
I gave you a very simple answer. If you misdiagnose anything,
right,
whether it's a serious disease or an international geopolitical threat, you will never solve it. For the last 8 years, we had an administration that say, oh, it's economics.
Let me just stop you for a second.
These people are disenfranchised. It's not about economics. It's not about being disenfranchised. It's about people who have an ideology that is evil and has to be destroyed.
Okay, so as opposed to operate.
So welcome back, everybody. Kevin Jackson here. So Velshi goes on to say this. He says, we don't have to argue or debate a definitional agreement because he wants to move on. And he's completely wrong. Gorka is saying, yes, you do. You have to agree that misdiagnosing this problem is a major issue, because that is the crux upon which I'm going to build, I should say the foundation upon which I'm going to build my strategy. If you continue to ignore that radical Islam is radical Islam and you want to say, oh, it's because they don't have economic opportunity and all these other things, you downplay what we're saying. That's like saying, the reason why, people join gangs is because they don't have economic opportunity, but we're not going to call them gangbangers. We're going to call them disenfranchised young black men. There's a difference between a young black man who's out there working hard and trying to get a job and the one who joins a gang and is willing to hurt or kill you just because you happen to be coming through his neighborhood. And we can certainly call them gangbangers. So why is it you're unwilling to have the definitional, and that's a word nobody uses, but the definitional agreement that these are Muslim terrorists? And then they go into, well, it's lone wolf versus this. And Gorka, I didn't get to keep this clip, but he corrects him and says there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Yet again, more propaganda from the previous administration. Every attack that has been made in America by a so-called lone wolf has tentacles that go back to either ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or some of these radical Muslim groups and radical Islamic groups. Call it whatever you want. That is where these ties bind. And don't try to soft shoe this stuff. And I love that he's saying, I don't care what you guys say. This is what it is. This is the way we're going to be talking about it. And it isn't spin. And that, if we can't agree that going to the doctor and getting a misdiagnosis is not a good thing, then what are we doing talking to you people? See, this is why I tell you leftists are idiots of the highest order.
Kevin Jackson
on the Black Sphere Radio Network.
Do you owe back taxes to the IRS or state? The secret to avoiding the IRS nightmare is to seek professional representation. My friends at Security Tax Associates provide the most cost-effective and ethical representation in the industry while helping to avoid seizures, levies, and wage garnishments. Security Tax Associates is here to ensure that the appropriate steps are taken to permanently eliminate any possibility of future tax burdens once and for all. For a free, no-obligation consultation, contact Security Tax Associates, 844-779-4177. That's 844-779-4177. 844-779-4177, or visit them at securitytaxassociates.com.